I write books that are about extreme self-improvement projects that I undertake on myself. I wrote one about living by all the rules of the Bible for a year. I did one where I went around the world and thanked 1,000 people who had anything to do with my morning cup of coffee. The barista, but also the farmer in South America, the logo designer, and the guy who drove the beans to the coffee shop, over 1,000 people.
Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am good in some ways, struggling in others.
Okay. Why are you struggling?
Oh, just the usual. That's my answer now when people say, "How are you?" Because I like to normalize the fact that we all struggle.
Yes, we do indeed.
But we also have great parts to life as well. So it's a balance.
That is true. That is true. There is always a balance. What is going well? What is not going well?
Well, that's a good question. I'm happy with the way my career is going. My marriage seems solid. I guess I'm getting older, so my body is making weird noises that I didn't know about. So that that sums it up. What about you?
Well, I'm in sunny California, which is always good.
Nice.
And my dog loves me, I think, which is good.
Very good.
Yeah.
I love
Say it again.
I love the unconditional love of a dog. And it's just, well, maybe it's conditional because I do feed him. I think she would be very angry if I stopped feeding her. But other than that, it's just unconditional.
I think you're right. So tell me, what's your name?
My name is AJ Jacobs, and I am a writer. I live in New York City, and I write nonfiction books.
Oh, cool. What kind of nonfiction books? I'm like an avid reader. I've read many, many books. I love books.
Well, maybe you read mine. Who knows? I write books that are mostly about extreme self-improvement projects that I undertake on myself. So I do something for a year and then I write about it. I wrote one about living by all the rules of the Bible for a year called The Year of Living Biblically. I did one called Trying to Be the Healthiest Person Alive called Drop Dead Healthy. I did one where I went around the world and thanked 1,000 people who had anything to do with my morning cup of coffee. So the barista, but also the farmer in South America, and the logo designer, and the guy who drove the beans to the coffee shop, and just over 1,000 people. So that's me, at least professionally.
Do you know what? I've heard of your book about living biblically.
Ah, very good. Yeah, I got some, and it was turned into a terrible TV show. So there's that.
So I never saw the TV show, but what inspired you to do that? I'm very fascinated by that because on some little small level, I've done similar things. I've put myself into guinea pig situations where I've, given myself a goal and nothing will stop me from reaching that goal. And I've learned so many profound lessons from those type of social experiments, let's say. So kind of what inspired you to go out into the world and do all these things? I'm sure you've done more things too. Yeah,
well, the inspiration is overall, like you say, I love to experiment on myself because I think you learn new things and it's the best way to keep life interesting. On specific ones, like if you ask me, why did I do the Bible one? That one was because I grew up with no religion at all. I say in the book, I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish in the same way the Olive Garden is Italian. So not very. But I had a kid and I wanted to know what to teach him about our heritage, if anything. And so I thought one way to learn about the Bible would be to live it, to follow all the rules. So I wrote down the hundreds of rules, especially in the Old Testament. And I wanted to follow the famous ones like the 10 Commandments, but I also wanted the ones that don't get a lot of attention. So the Leviticus says you cannot shave the corners of your beard. I didn't know where the corners were. So I just let the whole thing grow, and I had it down to like almost my belly button. It was crazy. And Leviticus says to stone adulterers. So I tried to do that. I used very small stones like pebbles. So it was a wild experience, and some of it has stuck with me. Not the stoning, not the beard, as you can see, but stuff, lessons about gratitude and trying to be a better person. So it was a mixed bag. My wife hated it for many reasons, but it was fascinating. And yeah, I think it's my best-selling book so far.
And what was the main lessons you learned from living biblically?
Well, there were several. I'll just give you like 3 off the top of my head. One was don't take the Bible literally, which is because there are millions of people who say they do. But I was trying to show, well, you take some of it literally, but you don't take it all literally. So we all cherry pick, and it's okay as long as we admit that we cherry pick and that we choose the right cherries, the sweet cherries, because the Bible has lots about compassion and loving your neighbor and embracing outcasts. So you focus on that, not on that homosexuality is an abomination or that the world was literally created in 7 days. So that was one takeaway. But there were also takeaways on a more personal level, like gratitude. I talk, the Bible is very specific about giving thanks for everything. So I took that literally. I would press the elevator button and be thankful the elevator came. I'd get in the elevator and be thankful it didn't plummet to the basement. And it was a weird way to live, but it was also wonderful because it made me realize there are hundreds of things that go right every day that we totally take for granted. And we focus on the 3 or 4 that go wrong. So that was a lovely lesson. Another lesson was the importance of how the outer affects the inner, of sort of people talk about fake it till you make it or fake it till you feel it. And I think this is actually very profound because I would have to act as if I were a good person, even if I wasn't. So I would have to pretend I was compassionate. And if you pretend you're compassionate long enough, it sinks in a little. It tricks your mind and you become a little more compassionate. And there's a great quote that I did not make up. I wish I did, but it was the founder of Habitat for Humanity said, it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. So the acting often affects the thinking. And I love that lesson. I use it all the time.
Amazing stuff. Have you ever found yourself, do you give speeches?
I do. I love giving talks because I love the immediate feedback. Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation with someone who, specifically talking about the biblical book, that someone has like questioned you on the fact that you should take the Bible literally?
Well, yes, there it is. I was very nervous when I wrote that book because I thought I would be slammed. It would be really controversial. I was very surprised. Most of the response was like 95% was positive, partly because people are very good at confirmation bias. So I would get hundreds of emails from atheists saying, thank you for showing how crazy religion is. And I'd get hundreds of emails from religious people saying, thank you for showing the good side of religion. So everyone was interpreting it in their own way. But yes, occasionally I would get people who would say, you are, you're being flippant. You're not taking it seriously. I did take it seriously, but I would try to turn it back on them and be like, the Bible says these things. So if you are taking every part of it literally, you should not be saying the days of the week. Those are because the Bible says in the Old Testament, no names of pagan gods shall be uttered from your lips. And the days of the week are named after pagan gods, like Thursday is named after Thor. That's a pagan god. So I would try to prove to them that we all practice cafeteria religion, or cafeteria thinking, and it's okay as long as you pick the good meals and not the hateful ones.
And what did they say to you? What did they say to you when you said that to them, specifically about the days of the week?
Well, I don't think I made an impact. I think that I do think that some of my books have made an impact, but I think it's partly because I try not to be hectoring. I try not to be really lecturing. I just try to explore. And I think that I've done a lot of thinking about how to change people's minds. And you don't do it by presenting them with facts or logical arguments. You do it by listening and then trying to work together to figure out, treat it as a puzzle, figure out what do you really disagree on and what evidence can either one of us present that might change our mind, and where can we go together from here. So yeah, I don't expect when I present something like, here's a super logical reason why you're wrong, that just rarely works and usually backfires. People just get annoyed and more entrenched. But I did want to add one thing, because I did do some research on you, and I love your projects. And I love kindness. Kindness is one of the themes that I love to talk about. And I actually wrote an article for the New York Times that came out 2 weeks ago about a kindness themed project that I did that was it was nothing like yours. I didn't leave my office, and I didn't have a motorcycle, but it was can I tell you the story quickly?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, what happened was, when I was a teenager, we went on a family trip to Alaska, and my sister and I rented a kayak, and we were paddling out into Glacier Bay National Park, huge, 3 million acres, beautiful. We turn around after half an hour. The channel that we had gone through was gone. We found out later it was because the tide had changed and no one had told us. But we didn't know it. We were just lost. So we made a left and we kept on paddling, and we paddled and paddled. Hours passed by. It got colder. It started to rain, got dark. Meanwhile, my parents were on land freaking out, especially because the park rangers told them that we had probably been washed out to the ocean and drowned. So that's not like they suffered more than we did. So anyway, we were paddling. Finally, at 1 a.m, after many hours, we hear these people on land, these campers, the only campers for miles. And they happen to be up at 1 because they were drunk, thank God, and making noise. We start shouting. They start shouting come on. They went out, they paddle out, and they bring us back, and they give us food and a tent, and they go and schlep for like half a mile to get the food, because they had hung it up to be away from the campsite and bears. And they were just extraordinarily kind, like beyond what they never complained. In the morning, my parents had rented a seaplane and to search for us, and they found us in the morning, and we went away, and we left Alaska, and we never saw the campers again. And we were too frazzled to say the proper thanks. So when I told my son this story a couple of years ago, he said, well, you're into gratitude. Why don't you find the people who showed you this kindness and thank them? And I was like, that's a wonderful idea. So I spent several months in the pandemic on this quest to find these guys who saved our lives. And I did get the report from the park that was like 34 years old. So it's a miracle it still existed. And I got it reported on the name of one of the campers who saved us. And it was Doug Rand. So I spent, several weeks calling about 80 Doug Rands around the US, asking them the strange question of whether they had rescued me 30 years ago. But it was lovely because the kindness the kindness of the campers. You had that. You had the kindness of hundreds of people who were helping me on my quest for free. Like they had nothing. They just thought it was a nice quest. And then you had another level of kindness talking to the Doug Rands, and many of them were just lovely people. And one, I talked to the widow of one Doug Rand who like went on and on about he was the kindest person she knew, and he did taxes for poor people who couldn't afford an accountant. He just did it pro bono, and now she does it pro bono. So it was, even though I still haven't found the Doug Rand, and maybe he's listening right now, please contact me. But even without that, it was just a lovely experiment in kindness.
That's such a beautiful story.
Thank you, Leon.
Your son is very wise to have inspired you to look for him.
Absolutely. I know. I was very great. I put his name in the New York Times. So I'm very grateful to him.
I'm sure he's grateful for that too. I hope you find him. I really do. That would be really quite a beautiful thing to be able to like find someone that saved you all those years ago.
I know. I mean, one thing, the cynical side of me says, well, what if I find him and he's like a QAnon supporter or something like that? But the non-cynical side of me is like, even if I don't agree with him politically, he did save my life, and I want to pay him back or pay it forward somehow.
Absolutely. Well, you are on some level paying it forward anyway in this story, because by putting it out in the New York Times, you're inspiring people to be kind.
I hope so. And I love that you do the same. And I love, that you are putting that word out as well, because we need it. It's people forget that I think we are basically wired to be kind, because it's how we survived as a species.
I try and tell people that all the time. It's part of our DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you'd mentioned how you did a project where you went and said thank you 1,000 times. I think I've heard of that one too. Can you explain that a bit more? Sure.
That one, again, came about from my kid, because I was, after the Bible book, I knew intellectually gratitude is huge. I love the quote from, I forget the name of, he's a modern Benedictine monk. And he said, happiness does not lead to gratitude. Gratitude leads to happiness. The causal arrow goes the other way. So I tried to incorporate gratitude whenever I could. And I would say at the beginning of a meal, sort of a secular prayer saying, I'd like to thank the farmer who grew this tomato, and the woman at the grocery store who sold me this tomato. And my son said, this is a different son, but he said, that's fine, but those people, they're not here. They can't hear you. So it's kind of lame. If you really cared, you would thank them in person. And I said, that is a lovely idea. And so I did coffee, because I love coffee. My kids wanted me to do like chocolate, something that they could enjoy. So they were disappointed. But the idea was to take this morning cup of coffee I got from a cafe and show that there are hundreds of people we take for granted that play a role in making it possible for me to drink that. So the ones you would expect, but hundreds more that you just don't think about, like as I say, the logo designer, or the person who drove the truck with the coffee beans. They couldn't have driven the truck without the road. So I figured I should thank the people who paved the road, or the people who painted those yellow lines in the road so the truck didn't go into oncoming traffic. So I took it very wide, maybe too wide, but my idea was it was to show the interconnection, the hundreds of people we take for granted, and it was lovely. And I imagine kindness and gratitude are very linked. So you are also, I imagine, a big gratitude fan.
I mean, gratitude is very important, right? You can go outside, be in a bad mood, and look at a tree and feel grateful for the presence of that tree. I think the trick is to be able to get out of your mood and feel that gratitude, right? That's
right.
For me anyway. I know how to, like now I can see this beautiful tree. So I have gratefulness for the presence of the tree, but I'm in a good place. So the trick is to be able to feel gratitude when you're in a bad place for the tree, right?
Totally. Well, yeah. It's interesting because that relates to what I was talking about before, sort of the idea of that acting makes you change your mind. So for this project, for instance, I would wake up in my default mood, which is not grateful, it's grumpy. And I would force myself to go out there and say thank you to people. And often it was awkward and I didn't want to do it, but I would call or visit. And by the end of a couple of hours, it started to sink in. And I would force myself to realize that these people had done amazing things for me. So yeah, that is one way I sort of trick myself into being grateful.
Well, what are some of the most profound moments during that specific journey of thanking someone, and where, what was a profound moment of thanks that you had?
Oh, there were many, but I'll just give you one random one that comes to mind. Is I called the woman who does pest control for the warehouse where the coffee is stored. And I said to her, I know this is strange, but I just want to thank you for helping to keep the insects out of my coffee. And she said, well, that is strange. You know, I don't get thanked a lot, but it's also wonderful. Like, thank you for making my day, which in turn made my day. So gratitude is a two-way street, especially when you go out and express it. So I was feeling the warm glow. She was feeling the warm glow. She described it as sort of an crank phone call, like a bizarro crank phone call where you call out of the blue and just say something nice. And I love that. Because I do think it was an awkward call. Like, it was very awkward to say to a stranger, like, you don't know me. And some people will be like, what are you trying to sell? Is this a pyramid scheme? But most of them will listen and be grateful. And that was a profound realization, is that we hugely underthank people, and we overestimate how awkward it would be. It was awkward, but in the end, it was wonderful. So yeah, go out of your way and be awkward and thank people who you don't know, but who have affected your life in a good way. That was my takeaway.
I like it. Let me ask you a question. I'm pretty much sure I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. As a kid, were you curious?
That is a lovely question. And yes, I love curiosity. It is, along with gratitude and kindness, like those to me are the big three. And so, yes, I was very curious. I was always going. We lived next to the Scientology Center, a block away from the New York Scientology Center. And I remember going in there as a high schooler. And I am not a Scientologist. I do not believe in what they believe, but I love going in and just learning about different cultures and different ways of seeing the world, even if I disagree. And my new book, actually, my most recent book, is an ode to curiosity. I love it's called The Puzzler, and it's all about my love of puzzles, which are based on curiosity. And I once I was working at a men's magazine, Esquire, and I interviewed Alex Trebek, the great Jeopardy host. And the quote that I still remember from him was about curiosity. He said, I'm curious about everything, even those subjects that don't interest me. And I love it because it doesn't really make sense. Like, how can you be curious about things you're not interested in? But it also totally resonates with me. I am curious about everything, even things like, accounting that are stereotypically boring. I'm sure accounting, if I got into it, would be fascinating. because even accounting, it's not about dry numbers. It's about people's businesses and their passion and their family. So anyway, the long answer to your question is yes, I was curious and I love curiosity. What about you?
I'm exceptionally curious. And what I noticed with you and to a certain degree with me is that you've taken your curiosity that is kind of innate on some level in children, and you've transferred it to adulthood. And by doing that, you've kept your inner kid alive and well. And most people don't do that.
Well, yeah, that's very high praise. Thank you. Because I love to cultivate curiosity, and yeah, why just leave it to the kids? Old people can be curious too. It keeps life so much more interesting. And it goes back to what we were saying. Like we are in such a crazy moment in terms of the culture war. And to me, curiosity is one of the only ways out of it. So when you're talking to someone, instead of trying to berate them, try to be super curious as to why they believe what they believe. And that's the way I keep my sanity. And when reading the news or talking to people, is curiosity.
And how do you think that we can inspire curiosity in others?
That's a great question. I think first, let me turn around on you while I think of something semi-coherent to say. Do you have any ideas on how to inspire curiosity?
I've never had a question turned on me, but that's a good one.
Well, I'm curious. So
yeah, you're curious. Look, I would say that how you inspire curiosity in others is maybe by telling stories, right? Like you tell a story that's non-judgmental. You tell us your own story. You kind of drag them in gently, right? By inspiring their innate curiosity. And there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. You just you come from your heart. You inspire understanding, non-judgment. And I've done that a few times. I remember I was in I have to be careful how I tell the story, but I was in Utah, and I met this family that had I guess I would call it a dungeon filled with guns. Wow. And it's okay. Let them have a dungeon filled with guns. If that's what they want, then that's okay. But I was really curious as to why they had a dungeon that was filled with guns. And
that is,
yeah, it's kind of curious, right? And I guess this is really explaining my own curiosity, but I would ask them questions that were very simple, very non-threatening, because I could sense that, I'm English, and they're like, why is he asking us why we have a dungeon full of guns? I didn't use the word dungeon. I just said, like, it's interesting that you guys have so many guns. Like, I find that really fascinating. It's great. Why do you have so many guns? And they would tell me the stories about why they have so many guns, whatever those stories were. And then I would get them to ask me questions, which is like, why do you think that us having so guns is weird, not non-confrontational, right? And I would say, well, I grew up in England, which I, of course, know is a little bit different to America in the sense of the gun laws. So where I come from, it's weird to have guns at all. Of course, I get that you guys have guns, and that's perfectly okay. So you start the conversation and you don't attack them, right?
Yes,
right.
Because
the moment someone feels like they are attacked, as you said, they will just shut down. Yeah. So right. I don't know how we got to like a dungeon full of guns in Utah, but we did.
I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. It is asking questions, being open-minded, and stories. I think you're right. And two other things I want to just throw in, which I thought of when you gave me some time to think, thank you, which is one, I love this quote from Quincy Jones, the musician. He says, his life philosophy, he says, I don't have problems, I have puzzles. So he sees problems as puzzles, which is so empowering, because problems, it's such a negative word. It's so intimidating and intractable. Puzzles is like, okay, it's solution oriented. Even playful sometimes. So that, to me, trying to see the world as a series of puzzles is a very curiosity inspiring. And another area I was thinking of is my kids are in school now, in high school, and I love that for one of their, whenever they get an essay where they get to choose like almost any topic under the sun, I love that, because I think that's one of the best ways, is let kids or people follow their own curiosity where it leads. If you have a very strict assignment, you have to write about Paul Revere and his Midnight Ride, then you're going to lose a good portion. But if you say, write about anything having to do with colonial America, and if you're interested in toys, then write about the toys of colonial America. I love that way of inspiring curiosity.
The quote you just said, I don't have problems, I have puzzles, is brilliant.
Oh yeah, the Quincy Jones. Yes, I love that.
It's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Because I think as human beings, we like fixing things. Yeah?
Yeah.
If you say the word problem, you get sucked down into darkness. But if you say the word puzzle, you're like, all right, how do I resolve this? What can I do? I'm going to use that. Going to use that. Because often I say, I have a problem, and I immediately, my energy goes down. But I'm saying, I don't have a problem, I have a puzzle. Ooh. How do I resolve this puzzle?
Absolutely. I find it a much better way to live. As you say, it's much more inspiring. And it gets you in the solution mindset. And I do think we need more of a solution mindset. I'm friends with friendly with this guy who started something called the Solutions Journalism Network, which is trying to get people in the media to write more about solutions. Because you look at the media and 90% of the articles are about problems or puzzles, as we would call them, without providing solutions. So let's hone in on people who are being successful at solving these puzzles and highlight them and show people that, give them some optimism that we can solve puzzles. That's what we've been doing as humans for thousands of years.
It definitely is. So tell me, what other projects have you done? What other moments of social experimentation have you put yourself through?
Well, I did one many years ago about a movement called radical honesty. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this movement. You have.
Yeah.
Did you have you, and maybe even had Brad Blanton on your podcast? He's a great
I haven't. But explain it. It's beautiful.
Well, it is beautiful in some ways and ugly in others. But it's started by this great character named Brad Blanton, who's a psychologist, and he believes in radical honesty, which means that you should always tell the truth. But he goes further than that, because he believes basically whatever's on your mind should come out of your mouth, no filter. So it is hardcore. So if you are, for instance, the classic, do I look fat in this dress? You are supposed to say yes, because he believes that is a more authentic way to live, and authenticity will lead to happiness. So I tried this for a couple of months, and I found it fascinating, scary. I found it in some ways wonderful, and in some ways I would never want to do it again. So just to give you the never want to do it again, I think we have a filter for a reason. There are times when a filter is good. So for instance, when my wife and I ran into a friend of hers from her college, that she hadn't seen in years. We saw him at a diner, and the woman was like, "Oh, we should all get together with our, have a play date with our kids." And so by radical honesty, I had to say what was on my mind, which was, well, you seem like nice people, but I really don't have any interest in seeing you again. I don't have time to see the friends that I have. So I don't want to take you on. And that was, of course, horrible. I felt like an asshole, which I was. And my wife was upset. And, I can't imagine the friend enjoyed it. So that was the negative. There are times for filters. The positive is it's not all brutal honesty. Sometimes it's wonderful honesty. Sometimes it's saying emotions that we generally hold in. So it's saying, to your friends, I love you, or saying to calling up a mentor that you're just thinking of out of the blue and saying, what you taught me 20 years ago, I still think about it every day, and it's changed my life, and I just want to thank you. So that I sort of like the what I call positive radical honesty, or sustainable radical honesty, but I don't encourage radical honesty. But it was quite an experiment. What's your?
It's very interesting about that we're talking about the radical honesty piece, because I think I try with my partner to be radically honest with my partner. I'm not going to be radically honest out there in the world, because, as you said, there are some really negative things that can happen. But with my partner, I try to be radically honest. And I have found that even she can't handle it. Seriously. Like, but I think it's authentic. It's true. I'm not being mean. I'm not being like, I want radical honesty. Right? Like, for example, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I am. How do I say this delicately? So I went to kiss her. Okay.
Right.
And she said, your breath smells. Yeah.
Good, yeah.
And I was like, oh, thanks for telling me. So I went to brush my teeth. I don't care. It's like, tell me the truth. If my breath smells in that moment, I want to know the truth. Yeah.
Right.
But then there'd be moments when I tell her the truth and she can't handle it. Interesting. So I love this experimentation that you do. I love the way that you do this. It's like you've made yourself into a guinea pig. And by making yourself into a guinea pig, you learn things that you would never have learned. I'm screaming for some reason. You learn things that you would never have. When I get excited, she sometimes says to me, Leon, do you know that you're shouting? I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just excited. I don't mean to be shouting. Sorry about that. But yeah, you learn things that you would never have been able to learn had you not put yourself into the guinea pig situation.
Well, yes. Thank you for that. And I love it. And I am an evangelist for people doing more experiments on themselves and making themselves guinea pigs. And I don't think you have, don't have to tell your wife she looks fat in a dress. You don't have to, grow a huge beard. It could be small experiments. It could be, try not to gossip for a week. Try to, be a vegetarian for a week. See what happens. See, you may go back, you may learn nothing, but chances are you've learned something that you can take away. Even if you go back to gossiping, maybe you gossip less, maybe you gossip in a different way. So I am a big fan of changing up your life whenever you can, just to learn and keep it interesting and make it better.
We're on the same page. How would you inspire others to do the same?
I would say maybe once a month, come up with a new experiment and announce it. That helps the accountability. Like if you announce it at the beginning of the month, say, I'm going to spend a month, trying to read one book a week. And then people will be like, how's the reading going? And if you don't do it, then, maybe you're embarrassed. So I would say yes, every month or whatever it is, every 2 months, every week, come up with a new experiment. And it can be small, but give it a shot. And I think it'll make your life more fun and interesting. And hopefully you'll learn something that sticks with you.
Indeed. Listen, man, it was a real pleasure to connect with you. And say hi to how many sons? You have 2.
I actually have 3. The third one I didn't mention, but
you didn't mention the third. Okay, say hi to all your sons. They seem like a curious bunch, and indeed. I know where they got it from.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing what you do with spreading the word on kindness. That is lovely. So I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Hello everyone, it's Leon here, aka the Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.